Ladies and gentlemen, Merry Christmas. It is the first day of winter. And doesn't this look like the Grinch set back here? Yeah, we are totally festive today. I'm here with the great Jorge Gill and the equally great Phoenix Hayes. And we are going to go through some of the top videos from 2023, 2022. And we're going to talk about lessons learned. We're also going to take your questions. And we have some surprise announcements tonight. Here we are live. What is it right now? 9:07 Eastern Time, December 21st. So let me bring my colleague Phoenix Hayes. Phoenix, Merry Christmas. How are you?
So good. Now, you said that equally good. I'd like to say equally, but a little bit better.
You're a little bit better than the great Jorge Gill? Hey, you guys haven't seen this. Well, actually, a lot of you know that I kind of have a pet peeve of the way people interpret the Bible. Like a lot of people will interpret Jeremiah 29:11 as if it applies to them. You know, Jeremiah 29:11, all the plans I have.
Hey, those are my promises, man. Yeah,
that is my
promises for me.
My life verse.
Hey, I have 30 cars with that on, okay?
Do you have any pillows with it?
Yeah,
Jeremiah 29 with the pillow.
That too, absolutely.
All right, for those of you that haven't heard this, Jeremiah 29:11 is not a promise to 21st century Christians. It's a promise to the people that were exiled out of Judah in 586 BC by the Babylonian dictator Nebuchadnezzar. He took them to Babylon, modern day Iraq, and through the prophet Jeremiah, God promised those exiles that he would promise to actually prosper them 70 years later, bring them back to Judah. It's not a promise to 21st century Christians, yet you see this, you know, on pillows, on coffee mugs, on posters, on journals, you know, on bumper stickers, birthday cards. It's everywhere. And so when people say that, I say, if you're going to quote Jeremiah 29:11 as if it's a promise to you, why don't you quote Jeremiah 44:11? Why? What does Jeremiah 44:11 say? Jeremiah 44:11 is the promise that God made to the exiles that went to Egypt, and he warned them, don't go to Egypt. You know what Jeremiah 44:11 says? It says, I will bring disaster upon you and all of Judah. You don't see that stitched into a pillow. Actually, now you do. Because somebody just sent this to me today. Check this out.
It's the best.
Look at that.
No,
That is hilarious, man. That is hilarious. Make sure you don't miss it.
That's right. I don't know who sent this to me. It just came in the mail today. But yeah, that now it is in a pillow, and you're going to start seeing this on coffee mugs, on posters, on birthday cards. It says, I am about to bring disaster against you, right there.
They should have at least embroidered little like blood drops and maybe ash just to really bring it home. This is a one-off. They're not selling very many of these, are they?
You're definitely
beautiful. This is a beautiful stocking stuffer, ladies and gentlemen.
You're definitely not gonna get rich off of that.
But I think we need to introduce it to our store, 2024.
That's right.
Oh, that's just funny.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the videos that some of the Q&A videos that we've been engaged in the past couple of years. Most of these are from 2023, but actually the first one is actually from 2022. And the reason we selected this one is because it's got 2.3 million views.
Yeah.
And what we're going to talk about is we'll watch the video, and then we'll talk about some lessons learned, things that maybe I could have done better, things that lessons we take from it. And if you're trying to answer questions, what are some tactics you can use to answer them well? This comes from a woman by the name of Grace.
Well, before we start there, Frank, I want to go ahead and let everybody know that here at Cross Examine is a big team. It's several of us. It's almost 12 people that are involved in making sure that you get those videos out there. Obviously, Frank creates goes to college campuses, have the dialogues, prepare himself. But there is a big team behind it to make sure that the videos are properly posted edited down to where they need to be, have great thumbnails, great descriptions. They're searchable, great titles. And Phoenix actually handles a lot of that. We have a bunch of other people. We cannot name them right now, but we want to let you know. But we want to go ahead on. we want to go ahead on and let you guys know. We want to make sure that let you guys know that we put hard work, and you're about to see why we do what we do. So now, Frank, back to you.
So yeah, this is Grace. She claims to be a biology student. She goes to LSU. That's where we were. This is from probably April of 2022. I had just given a talk on Correct, Not Politically Correct about pretty much the problems with transgenderism. So here it is. Check it out.
Okay, so we want to bring it
We're
up.
probably going to stop this a few times. People
we might
hang with us.
Yeah. Here we
Ready?
go.
All right. So, and everybody who are watching this, make sure to let us know that you can hear it as well. We want to make sure that you guys have good audio and can hear this. Okay, here we go. I think we're having a little issue here.
Mm-hmm. She's a biologist. What happened then?
Wait. No. With the audio. So I need to bring another. Yeah, I need to bring this audio in real quick. So just a second. So it's muted, so they can hear it. So I just have to add a really quick item. So you two guys talk while I set this out.
All right. Well, speaking of biologists, I met a microbiologist yesterday. He was a lot bigger than I expected.
Oh, boom! Amazing,
Come on, Frank.
Right out the gate. I never heard that one. That was great. No, this video, I'm excited to play it because I was also on the live stream monitoring team the evening this aired, and there was several moments where I know behind the scenes my jaw dropped and hit the floor. I mean, you'll know when it happened if you don't happen to be one of the 2.3 million that have seen this. There's a couple of key moments where you're just like, record scratch, what just happened? Mm-hmm. And we're all, even the team, are thinking, where's Frank gonna go from here? So I'm really looking forward to going through this one.
She was kind of a bit of a steamroller, and a steamroller comes from Greg Koukl's book Tactics. That's someone who just won't take a breath and just keeps going and doesn't really acknowledge what you've said. They just move on to the next point. So this is what Grace was sort of like, as you'll see. Are we ready, Jorge?
I think so. Let me go ahead. I got to make sure we are doing it right. So let's see if the audience can hear this real quick.
I understand the biology. Are you saying that a woman is only...
I think everybody can hear it now. So let me go ahead and put a little filter here. Make sure nobody goes deaf. Okay, no, we don't want to do that. We want to go ahead on and let me go ahead on and set it up. This whole thing, man, it is.
All right, they're saying it's good.
They got it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Let me. Here properties. Okay, 1 second. I'm just gonna bring it down a few decibels, and here we go, guys.
A person who has 2 X chromosomes and a man who is someone who only has an X and a Y chromosome.
I think that's the scientific definition. Yes.
It's actually not, because there can be people with XXY. There can be Y chromosome inactivation.
By the way, Frank, she right there tried to give you a roundhouse to the face. You know, she immediately, she was waiting. You know, and that's one of the things that we she was just waiting. And one of the things that we have to realize is 99 times out of 10, like Richard House says, people are not listening or are not listening to understand. They're listening to respond. Okay?
Right.
The way that this biology works is that you have genes. Those genes make proteins. Those proteins develop the traits that you define as men and women. They develop the features that you define as male. They develop the genitalia. But you can be a woman with female genitalia and be XY. You can be a man, but you can have XX chromosomes.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about, Grace. You're talking about a very rare condition known as intersexed.
Right. 1 in 100 people experience chromosomal differences in sex.
Okay, but not 1 in 100 have different genitalia or ambiguous genitalia.
And what do you say to those people?
Well, what you say is that's a situation that is not the norm. We're not saying that they're not people, obviously. As I understand it, maybe you know more about it than me, when you do have a truly intersexed person, at that point, either the parents or when they're old enough, they can decide which way they're going to orient themselves and they can get the appropriate surgery. But that's not what we're experiencing in our culture.
It's okay for people to decide their gender.
In that situation, but that's not what we're talking about in our culture. What we're talking about in our culture are people with perfectly normal functioning sexual organs trying to have them removed and trying to transition to another gender, which is impossible scientifically.
Have you ever doubted that you're a man?
Mm-hmm.
Let's stop right here for a second. Let's stop right here for a second, just for a second. Now, when you're in front of an audience, you've got limited time, you can't always stop and question. You can do that a little bit, but if you do that too much, you'll never get through the question. Obviously, I could have stopped and asked her a question at this point. Like, did she even acknowledge the point I just made? No, she moved on to the next thing, as you noticed there. And so I just went with it and let her go on to the next thing. And as you'll see, she's articulate, but she doesn't acknowledge any point that I try and make to her. She just moves on to the next. Now, if you're in a private conversation with somebody, you can say, hey, can you just acknowledge what we just talked about there? Did you see what I just said there? Did that make any sense to you? And I probably could have done that here once or twice. I didn't. I just let her keep talking. That's probably my mistake. But there's a point where you got to kind of finish up the question and move on to somebody else. So I just kind of let her go from point to point. But the right tactical approach would be at this point to say, hey, wait a minute. I just said something. Yeah. Did you understand what I said?
Right.
Yeah, a bit of a dialogue going on.
Right.
In fact, as I was going through this in preparation for tonight, I counted 5 or 6 questions she slammed you with in between, but you can barely respond. And she's moved to the next one, moved to the next one. In that short video, she squeezes in 6. And I also counted at least 3 gotchas where she sets you up and she's waiting for the response. And like, to her credit, she crushed it in a lot of respects. Like if I didn't know better, I'd say she had read tactics. Well, she pulled out a lot of stops.
Yeah, but one of the things that we need to be also aware of is the rhetorical power of some of these statements that she's making, right? Because she's coming in, try to pull an authoritative approach because she studied biology and you, Frank, you're not a biologist, right? So things like that for the untrained ear and eye seem powerful. I actually just did a video about a response that Isaac Asimov made about the Brothers Karamazov line about, if God does not exist, anything is permitted. And the whole thing was just an emotional rant, didn't even touch the moral argument. So this is what we're seeing here. You want to continue?
Yeah, go ahead. All right. Continue.
Oh, have I ever doubted I'm a man? No, I have never doubted I'm a man.
Then what do you say to a transgender person who has never doubted their gender? You're saying that we all change and that obviously transgenderism is a product of...
There is Sir Jerry on YouTube says, she's ready to rumble with the hand or the hip. That's what he said. She's ready to go.
It's called a power pose.
Power pose. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Some kind of phase, but you've never doubted that you're a man. So
no,
where's your development of this change?
Grace, I'm not denying there are people truly with gender dysphoria. I've already said that. What I'm saying is the way out of that problem is not surgery according to the data. Okay? Psychiatry is the way out of that problem.
I also don't agree with your statement that after surgery, you implied that transgender people...
Next topic.
Yeah, right. She just moves on. She doesn't acknowledge anything. Now, I know you just said, Jorge, that this kind of argument from authority can be persuasive with people. But if you look at the YouTube comments, most people are going, wow, if this woman claims really to be a biologist, we're in big trouble. Right. Because she's just avoiding the biological realities.
It backfire on her. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But there are a lot of people in the audience that, as soon as they hear that, they're like, You know, because I think we suffer from the problem of the fact that we already know these things is the curse of knowledge. We know all these things, we study these things, but you know, let's say somebody like my 16-year-old daughter who is highly impressionable, she hears a young woman like that. You have to pay attention to that, you know.
Yes.
Let's keep going.
Let's continue.
Here comes the mic drop moment.
Yeah.
Okay, here you go.
People are more likely to commit suicide after surgery. But the statistics say that transgender people are more likely to commit suicide because of arguments that you make that they're invalid.
No, I'm not saying they're invalid.
I'm just saying that you implied that it's the surgery that's causing suicide.
No, it's
rates.
not. What I'm saying is the surgery doesn't fix anything. That's the point. It's practically the same rate whether they have the surgery or not.
If you woke up and grew breasts today, would like them to be removed? There are men.
Say that again?
Have you ever heard of gynecomastia?
I had it.
And so did you have that fixed?
I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, nobody was expecting that, you know.
For those of you that don't know, gynecomastia is a condition where you have like a little small mass on your breast. It can happen to men too. And it can make you look a little asymmetrical when you have your shirt off. And so when I was in the Navy, this developed. And since you're in the Navy, you get free healthcare. You know, you just, hey, can you take this out? Yeah, sure, we'll take it out. And that was it. I've never had an issue again. I mean, it was a scar about that big, you know, right under, I can't remember what side I had it on, but they just took it out. It was like kind of fibrous tissue.
Right.
And so she thought that this was causing me some sort of psychological had some psychological effect. It had no psychological effect on me. It was just that it just made you look asymmetrical.
Right.
So in any event, but she just keeps moving on. So let's just keep going.
Yeah. So steamrolling.
Yeah.
I did.
And did that make you feel affirmed in your gender and comfortable in your body?
No, when I was in the Navy, nobody knows this, by the way.
Now everybody knows, right? Now, the cat is out of the bag, man.
All right, sorry.
Everybody knows. All right, let's keep going.
Revealing I need a HIPAA form to sign here or something.
I got a guy here named Rene Vasquez says, I have that too. It's called moobs.
Moves.
This guy, I get to watch the chat, man. It's great. Okay, let's get Phoenix. Let's get full shot on Phoenix right now. And let's continue.
Stop. Keep going.
Ready? Okay,
Yes.
Let's go.
You don't have to talk about it.
No,
You don't
what
want
I'm
to.
saying is, yes, I've had that myself and had it surgically removed when I was in the Navy. Yeah.
And do you feel more comfortable in your body and more affirmed in your gender because of that?
Well, it wasn't a gender thing for me. It was the fact, well, I can't even get into it now because it had nothing to do with my gender. Okay. So it had to do with the fact that it looked really odd. Let me just put it that way. Okay. But Grace, my point is if we truly care about people, are we going to try and force them down a road, particularly as children, into a solution to a problem which is proven not to be a solution?
You just said that having that surgery made you feel better about yourself.
That has nothing to do with transgender surgery. I wasn't changing my sex. I was having breast tissue removed. Okay? I was always a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So.
And say that I have XY chromosomes, but I'm born with female genitalia and female body types, but I believe I'm a man. Should I not be allowed to have that breast tissue removed?
As an adult, you can do whatever you want.
Yes, that's fine.
My problem is with the children. That's where I'm having a real problem.
Is there a magic button at 18 that instantly makes you feel like you know who you are and absolutely what your gender is?
No, well, I think for women it's probably like 15. For men it's 37. To be honest with you, okay? Because men don't develop as quickly as women, all right? But no, we've just chosen 18 kind of as the adulthood crossing point, although for some issues it's 21, like drinking, okay? So, no, maybe it's later than 18, okay? My big problem, and I would say this to somebody who's 37, that the surgery does not appear to help anyone. And if you want more data on this, you can go to sexchangeregret.com. Sexchangeregret.com. But I wouldn't even be talking about this issue unless I thought the current way the culture's going is hurting people. And it is. Why would I bring all this abuse on myself?
I'd just like to say that I disagree.
Okay.
Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you, Grace.
All right. So she was, even though she was a steamroller, she was at least pleasant, right?
She
Absolutely.
really was. Yeah, she
Yeah,
remained and she showed self-restraint when everyone knew how she wanted to finish that sentence earlier with, because of people like, it just moves on.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Oh, and I think it's very important that you brought in the issue with the kids. I mean, the same way you realize that she said, well, is there a magic kind of day where you it's the same thing that the pro-abortion advocate says it's not a human being until he comes out of the womb. So that canal, right, the 8-inch canal makes the child a child, right, a person. But also, the issue with my kids, at least with my kids, they're 15 and 16, about to be 16 and 17. They don't know any better. You know what I mean? They have dumb phones. They don't have smartphones. Why? Because I know the stuff that is out there. Now imagine you giving these children the ability to go and mutilate themselves.
Yeah, well, let's go back to that point she makes, why 18? Okay, this is something in logic called the argument from the beard, which means that because you don't have a precise number, there is no distinction. That's not a valid way of arguing. An argument from the beard means, when does just having growth on your face become a beard? Well, you might not know the exact point, but you know the difference between a clean shaven face and a face like Jorge's face. He's got a full beard there. Okay.
Right.
So just because you can't detect the exact transition point between just stubble and a beard doesn't mean there's no distinction between a clean face and a beard. You might not be able to know the exact date or the exact age when somebody becomes an adult.
Right.
You do know the difference between a 37-year-old and a 7-year-old. Okay.
Right. And you got to set a date somewhere.
Yeah. A 37-year-old has certain capacities a 7-year-old doesn't. Okay. And so look, personally, biblically, of course, transgenderism is never appropriate. But if we're arguing in the political world, we at least have to say, as Christians, we can't allow children to do this because they can't give informed consent. And even if they could, it's not going to help them. That's what the data show.
Right.
So adults, we may allow certain things that we think are unbiblical because we can't be the nanny state and outlaw everything. However, when it comes to children, we have to draw a really bright line here. And that's why, by the way, Tennessee, they put their cross-sex surgery at 26. You got to be at least 26. And the reason they do that is because they say that the human brain doesn't fully develop until 26.
Until 26, yeah.
Right.
And now you're giving them the ability to think things through. The testimonials. Right now, we're running a Frankenstein experiments. The Europe already saying, hey, no more of this crazy mess, because they're going to sue them up the yin yang once these, transition people say, hey, I didn't get enough therapy. I didn't get enough, second or third opinions. And you guys just went off and chopped me all up. And now I'm here and it's irreversible. Forget it.
And by the way, this question brought to you by Correct Not Politically Correct about same-sex marriage and transgenderism, because that's the book I was talking about at LSU, and that's what precipitated that question. But if you want to go further, this book doesn't have any Bible verses in it. This is the natural law, common sense, medical case that both same-sex marriage and transgenderism are not good for individuals or nations. Let's go to the next one to keep this
All right.
moving.
Well, a little
This
bit
next
of a background fact is that book is almost responsible for cross-examine being cross-examined as it is today, because of the story related to how they did you when you actually was working.
And that's when I went full-time cross-examine back in 2011. But you have to get the book to figure out why.
Right. They need to read it.
This next one we included because this actually happened. I think this is probably from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills.
Yes.
And this is a Q&A session on a Wednesday night there. Jack Hibbs wasn't even there. I was just doing the a presentation and then mostly Q&A. And this is an important exchange, because whenever you're talking to a person who has a question, you got to remember you're not answering just a question, you're answering a person.
Right.
And we've sort of blurred out the face of this young man for a reason. Let's just play it and then we'll talk.
Okay.
Is it wrong as a follower of Jesus? Is it wrong to yearn for death?
To yearn for death?
Yes.
Depends on what you mean by that, Bobby. What do you mean by that?
Well, I kind of find myself wanting to just be out of this world already and just be with God, and because I just can't really stand to be in this world. So I pray a lot to die, and if it wills God for me to live, I'll live. But it's really hard for me to live on this planet with all these people that, kind of don't share the same faith. And, when I share my faith with them, it's like they reject it in a way. So.
Bobby, but that's on them. That's not on you. We can't bring everybody to Christ, but we can bring Christ to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me that you need to talk to somebody privately, and I appreciate you bringing this up here. Let me just say that God wants you to live. In fact, everybody loves Pastor Jack, right? I love Pastor Jack. Everybody loves Pastor Jack. But let me say something about celebrity culture in Christianity, because you're just as important to God as Pastor Jack. Okay? Everybody in this room is a child of God who has accepted Jesus, and you have something to offer in God's big plan. Most of us, ladies and gentlemen, most of us don't have the gifts to be on the stage necessarily, but your gift is just as important as Pastor Jack's, or as anybody on the stage. Don't treat people who are on the stage as any more important than anyone else, because every one of us is gifted to be part of God's plan in your own way, because you have certain gifts that other people don't have, and they may have gifts that you don't have. Paul talks about this at length in 1 Corinthians and also in Romans. I think Peter talks about it as well. So Bobby, don't think that just because people aren't responding to your evangelistic efforts that you're not making an impact. Because the results, God gets the results. We just be obedient and we leave the results to God. That's what we do.
Thank you.
Okay?
Now, what you didn't see, because we had to cut it off there, what you didn't see is at that point, I turned to a pastor there at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, and I said, "Can you meet with Bobby right after this?" And so they did. They met with him right after the session, because you want to take care of the person, not just the question. And obviously, and I'm sure some of the people watching sometimes get questions about suicide. That's basically what he was saying.
Frank,
you know,
Frank, suicide is on the rise in our children, man. It is going to be one of the main things for the next, 5-10 years, man. And COVID didn't make it any better.
No, I know. And that's why you have to come around people. I mean, sometimes I get the question, is suicide the unforgivable sin? Now, whenever somebody asks that, I always say, why are you asking that?
Right.
Because you want to make sure that person's not thinking about it themselves. So we're not trying to win arguments. We're trying to win people. And that's why you definitely want to make sure that you're trying to take care of the person rather than just merely the question. Any other insights on this, Phoenix? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, one of the things that stands out so much when you have that exchange is the hundreds of eyes on the two of you having this moment of complete vulnerability from Bobby reaching out, and you just see the entire congregation, and you can almost just read their mind, like, how's he going to handle this one? Like they're all waiting to see what you're going to do with it. And it's just a further reminder that often, in this case, I think you did help Bobby, but oftentimes, even if you're dealing with someone that's stubborn and hard-hearted, you're answering for the audience often, even if the questioner is not receiving what you have to say.
That's true. And in fact, those of you out there who are on social media interacting with people, it's probably not often you're going to convince the person you're having a so-called debate with. But the people watching might be persuaded. And so, first of all, you have to be ultra kind on social media, because it's so easy to get snarky on social media. You never want to do that. You don't want to be sarcastic. You want to be very kind to people and agree with them when you can. And just try and move people forward toward a relationship with Jesus, or a deeper relationship with Jesus. So those kind of questions are the most delicate. You saw the audience wanted to like hug the guy.
Inside that, because
they all wanted to clap for him.
His demeanor was that of darkness and loneliness, man. And these are we don't have light of our own. We reflect in Jesus's light, and we should be doing that for people like that. We have no idea what's going through their minds.
That's right. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is going to start, I think, this is from Ohio State, just last April 2023. We were doing a session called Should You Follow Your Heart? And there's a kind of a little laughter beforehand, because we just came out of a joke. It's when the guy says, my son is gay, we're laughing. It wasn't meant to be. It was a leftover from what somebody else had said something. But let's play this and we can talk about it.
All right.
Let's go.
My oldest son, David, is gay.
We're about out of time.
Okay. And
go ahead.
We've had some great conversations. He's asked me some great questions. One of his really interesting questions was, so Dad, let's say I find a man who I love, and we try and be good moral people and blah, blah, blah.
Stop.
Good people. I know.
Stop. What does good moral people mean?
Can I finish the question?
When I'm talking to him, as soon as he starts bringing up a moral standard, you need to say, where are you getting this moral standard from? And why do you think that's the purpose of life, to be good moral people? Where does this come from?
No, that's a good answer. Should have thought of that. But so I'd definitely ask him that again. But he says he's done some research, and Barna does good research, and finds that about 30%, maybe even a third, of ministers struggle with pornography.
Yeah.
Regularly.
Probably true.
And so it could be more. Those are the ones who admit it. You're right. So he says, what if I have this loving relationship, and maybe we have sex once a week, which is sinful?
Hey, Jorge, stop for just a second if you can.
Yeah.
I think some people are saying it's a little bit low on the audio.
All right, let's bring it up.
And if you can boost that up a little bit. But also,
want me to bring it back up?
Yeah, just a second. Notice that people, when they're asking a question, normally there's an assumption or two underneath the question that you can challenge. And you'll see when someone talks about right and wrong, or good or bad, you might want to stop and ask them, especially if they're not Christians, by what moral standard are you making such a judgment? Because if there is no God, it's just your opinion, right? And also, people assume that the purpose of life is to just be a good person. Well, where do we get that from? And first of all, what does good mean? And then secondly, why do you think that's the purpose of life? You're just assuming it is. I had an interview with Dave Rubin, who we agree on a lot. Obviously, Dave Rubin, however, personally is in a same-sex relationship himself, but politically and many issues we agree. And although he's not a Christian, we were in this, which you can see on his YouTube channel, this discussion about Christianity. He said something like, well, can't we just be good moral people? And I basically said, I'm paraphrasing, he didn't say it exactly that way. I'm saying, well, I don't think the purpose of life is to be a good moral person. That might be the result of the purpose, which is to know God and to make him known. But that's not the purpose. It's a result. It's a fruit of the purpose of life. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people think, well, if I'm just a good moral person, everything's going to be just fine. That's why we're here. Mm-hmm. So go ahead. You can pick it up. We got higher audio now.
All right. So let's bring it up and
someone who's a follower of Christ looks at pornography once a week. What's the difference?
They're both sinful, and they both should want to stop doing that. The problem is, as I see it, is that I don't think any pastor is going to get up and say pornography is a good thing and you ought to do it. But I do see some pastors now saying that same-sex relationships ought to be blessed by the church and by God. For example, the Church of England is now saying that, and that's why Calvin Robinson got up and gave that great speech to counterpoint that. So we're all sinners. Everybody, or no one's going to make it to heaven without Jesus. Oh, well, what about this sin? Okay, yeah, that's another sin that's going to keep you out of the kingdom. Homosexuality isn't the one thing that's going to keep you out of heaven, because even if you do engage in homosexual acts, you've done other evil things too, right? Just like heterosexuality isn't going to get you into heaven, because whether you're homosexual or heterosexual in your identity, with your claimed identity, you've done evil elsewhere. So why don't we just talk about good and evil to begin with? And how are you going to have the evil that you've done atoned for? Do you want grace or do you want justice in the afterlife?
That's good.
Yeah, you're only going to get one of the two. You're either going to get grace or justice.
Absolutely.
So even if a person is correct, the homosexual son of this man is not correct that same-sex relationships are just fine. But even if he was correct, he's still a sinner elsewhere. So yeah. I think it's important to always bring it back to the gospel. You might say, for the sake of argument, let's say you're right. You still need a savior, right? Mm-hmm. Whether same-sex relationships are okay or not, you still need a savior. And oh, by the way, by what standard are you saying it's correct? Mm-hmm. Any other insights from that, Phoenix?
Well, when I hear him say that, my instant reaction is, so what? Okay, so let's say every pastor, heaven forbid, every pastor is addicted to pornography. Mm-hmm. And what? Like, sure, that's a separate issue, but what impact does that have at all on your sexual ethics? Nothing. Mm-hmm. So really, it was just like, to me, it was a distraction. It was a red mm-hmm. herring. So, but I also thought, this is a common problem, that Christians have been inconsistent with their Christian ethics. And that's really damaged a lot of the ground that we could have made, the bridges we could have been building with people wrestling with same-sex attraction, is that we aren't consistent with sex, premarital sex, pornography, things like that. Generally speaking, it's for some reason, homosexuality, that's the big no-no. Right. All the others are smaller no-nos. Right. And it's like, no, it's all wrong.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to say is, if you guys listen to our Meet With podcast that we did, all of these ideas, like this man's son ideas about, maybe monogamy within a same-sex relationship is not that bad, are being sold and infiltrated in the church. as they are in many places in just secular society. So we have to be careful that with who we're allowing to speak in our churches and what ideas are we buying into, right?
That's right.
A father like that, I mean, my heart breaks. I don't know what something like that would feel, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to be able to answer these questions in a eloquent way, in a truthful way, because this is one thing that we cannot allow, and that is not just homosexuality; it's sin. Period.
Totally.
Well, the solution is not to say everything's okay because we're all inconsistent. The solution is stop being inconsistent.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, maybe we should talk more about that issue too. But there is a difference, as I mentioned in here, that very few people are going to say divorce is a good thing or pornography is a good thing, or, you know, but they will say same-sex behavior is a good thing. So this is actually being promoted.
Right. Flip it around. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this next one is a very recent one. This is from University of North Carolina at Wilmington. And this young man, Jake, who actually goes to the Ratio Christi meeting. I think he's just kind of a provocateur. He just likes to go and mess with the Christians. You know, he's not a Christian himself. Yeah. He asked a couple of questions, and I had talked about how the New Testament has eyewitness testimony in it. And here's what Jake said about it. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
So I just wanted to address something that you said in an answer you gave to someone else earlier, and it's this idea of, I forget the exact words you used, like the traumatic event. What was the specific verb?
Impact event.
Impact event. Yeah. And you used like reports on 9/11, like remembering where you were on 9/11 for an example of this. Segueing that into sort of evidence for perhaps the legitimacy of reports on the resurrection. Personally, I come from a psychology background. That's what I study here at UNCW. So I just wanted to bring up, I think it's interesting that you would use this as a topic and specifically use 9/11 as an example. Because as you can probably imagine, 9/11 is one of the most heavily studied impact events in the contemporary history of modern science. And it might seem a bit counterintuitive, but your intuitions on this are exactly and perfectly wrong. As it turns out, the very large amount of people have demonstrably false claims about where they were on 9/11. There's a lot of science and a lot of interesting things that go into this, but sort of a reason you use to support this claim is actually one of the reasons that's used to show why it's false. Hearing something over and over leads to a belief. I guess you seem to enjoy your cultural references. So one I might use to point this out is on the Luke, I'm your father versus no, I'm your father, where the vast majority of people might have at one point believed that the sentence was Luke, I'm your father, when that's just not the case. So just wanted to see if you had a response to that, where you using these two pieces of evidence, when in reality it's been very heavily studied that the claims you're making are patently false.
I think if we surveyed everybody in this room who's old enough, they would know where they were on 9/11.
Sure, they might think they do. But that's sort of the point, right? Is any answer you give, you believe to be true. Okay. But the point of the studies is to show that these beliefs are impossible.
Okay, Jake, I know exactly where I was, who I was talking to, and what was on the TV at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Secondly, it might be the case that, yes, people get wrong certain details, but do you think anybody at 9/11 in Manhattan would mistake that the Twin Towers fell that day?
Probably not.
No.
But that's not the claim.
Yeah, that is the claim I'm making is that they would have known if he had risen from the dead.
Sure.
Okay, that's the point. Not that they might remember every single detail, but they will say, I saw him, I witnessed him.
Sure.
Just like the people at 9/11 said, I saw those things came down, I will never forget it. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, and I just wanted to show you that the way in which you had phrased impact events and how they affect testimony.
How did I say it wrongly?
So what it seemed to me, the point you were making, was that the fact that people were, the fact that this event was an impact event for these people leads the testimony to be more likely to be accurate.
Yes.
So the response I would give is that just because something is shown to be an impact event doesn't necessarily mean that it's more likely to be accurate. In fact, it has been shown that the opposite can just as easily, if not more easily, be true.
Okay, well, we'd have to look at those studies because personal experience does not bear that out. Okay,
yeah, of course. I'm saying this less to like change your mind on this and more to sort of put this out there that the things that you're saying might not necessarily be true, and even just for you in case you want to change that in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Sure. But my main point is the big issue. In fact, let me just give you one other just so we're clear on this. And this might be helpful when people suggest that, oh, there's errors in the Bible, there's errors in the text, and therefore they couldn't have remembered all this. Take a look at this for a second. Titanic sinks, 1,500 die. The Carpathia was a ship that came over to pull survivors out of the water. They say 675 out of 2,200 were saved. Titanic sinks 4 hours after hitting an iceberg. 866 rescued by Carpathia. Probably 1,250 perish. The Newark Advocate, worst ocean disaster in world's history. Titanic goes down, 1,341 lives are lost. Wow. 868, they got the same number here. Washington Post, 1,800 souls lost, says latest wireless from the Olympics. 675 saved. Most women and children. Notice in these accounts, these are the dead that were reported by these 4 different sources. They're all different. This is the rescue that were reported, and they're close. These two are the same. These are close. What are the true numbers? I guess the question is, what should we conclude from these seemingly contradictory accounts? What do you think?
Sure, but
what would you conclude from that, Jake?
That testimony about specific events isn't necessarily accurate.
Okay, but what do they all agree on?
The fact that the Titanic sank,
that's
which is
it.
what I was going to
that's
bring
the point.
up. That's what I was
okay.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, they may get minor details wrong.
Sure.
Now, in this case, it may be because they didn't have enough information at the time, right? But no one would say, since they disagreed, the Titanic didn't sink. In fact, do you know that eyewitnesses on the Titanic disagreed over how it sank? Some say it went down whole, others say it broke in 2.
Sure.
What do they all agree on? It sank. Now, you might understand why they came to different conclusions. Sure. If you're on the side of the ship, you might have seen it break and go down, but if you're on the stern or the bow, you didn't see it break, and you said, oh, that whole thing went down at once. Also, it was dark, they were in shock, right? But there is not a person that did survive that will tell you the Titanic didn't sink.
Sure.
Okay. That's what I'm saying with regard to the resurrection and 9/11. That's my point.
Makes sense.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
So with regard to Jake, this is very typical among young people who get a little bit of education. They suddenly think that the whole discipline agrees with them all of a sudden, you know. So there's some psychological studies that say that people that get details wrong on impact events shows that you can't trust their memories. But that wasn't my point. My point wasn't, do you have all the details right? My point was, would anybody say if Jesus really rose from the dead that he didn't rise from the dead? If in fact if they really witnessed him rise from the dead, right? Everyone's going to agree on that. They may disagree who got to the tomb first, you know, all that kind of thing, you know, what time it was. Okay, fine. It's not the details we're concerned about. It's the big event, just like the Titanic. We may disagree over the details. That's fine. But did the Titanic sink? Yeah, everybody agrees on that. And everybody agrees on the resurrection, too. It's an impact event. I mean, if he really rose from the dead, do you think they would have forgotten that? They would have gotten that wrong? Hey, Peter, remind me, did he really rise from the dead? No, they wouldn't be doing that, right? They might say, was it at did he rise from the dead at 6 a.m. or 6:30? You know.
Right.
One of the things that we have to be mindful of is, you know, a lot of people who don't want to believe, they're going to try and come up with anything, you know, to not have to make that decision, you know, and we don't know psychologically where that young man is, but I know I fought God. I never thought that he didn't believe, but I never wanted him to be my Lord, where I have to say, yes, sir, you know, to the way he's asking me to live for my own good. So it is very interesting to see in these exchanges that you have, Frank, so frequently in college campuses. And I want to let everybody know here, we are going to more college campuses in 2024, Lord willing, and we're going to be doing a lot of awesome stuff this year with your help, everybody who is on the other side of the screen. But yes, you know, and the confusion is spreading, but we fancy ourselves to be one of the first lines of defense in the culture to bring people back to the truth. And it is not my truth. It is not Frank's truth. It is not Phoenix's truth. It is not Cross-Examined's truth. It is the truth. And we have to make sure that we continue doing this.
Now, one of the things I love about how you responded to this, Frank, is so when a student comes and announces that they've done a study and all the data proves that what you're saying is patently false. I mean, how do you respond to that? We're not walking encyclopedias, contrary to what some people might believe about the myth, the legend of Frank Turek. He hasn't memorized every study everywhere, but rather than go on the defense, he made a great he took a great strategy and basically said, one, that doesn't bear out in my personal experience, regardless of what the data says. And two, he then appealed to the audience. And it really worked in Frank's favor, because when Jake then said, sure, they think they do, I mean, they all laughed out loud. Like, who is this kid? Like, this kid thinks I don't know where I was. So it was a great move.
I think the other thing, too, is you always want to stay in the majors rather than the minors.
Correct.
You can say, you could even be right that they got, you know, who was at the tomb first. You know, that whole thing that Bart Ehrman brings up, you know, who got to the tomb first, you know, how many angels were at the tomb. You could say, let's say they got that wrong, you know, that there's contradictions. There are not, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say they got that wrong. Does that disprove Christianity?
Nah.
No, they all agree he rose from the dead. These documents wouldn't even exist, written by Jews in the first century, that say a man claimed to be God and rose from the dead, unless a man really did claim to be God and rose from the dead. Who would make this up? Nobody's going to make this up and get themselves beaten, tortured, and killed. Oh, they got the, you know, they got details. They disagree on the details. Who cares? I mean, for the truth of the matter. Now, as inerrantists, we have to explain these, and we can, many of them.
Yeah.
But the point here is stay on the major issues. You know, yeah, sure. You might get details wrong, but you're not going to get the main event wrong. That's the point, the main event.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. This next one, I think, is from William Woods University, which is a university in Missouri from this year. And this young woman is questioning really my approach with regard to science, and she thinks all truth comes from science. So let's take a look at this one.
All right.
You're providing all of this evidence, but evidence has to be derived from fact, and fact is usually backed up with science. So are you, I guess it's not making sense in my head, are you like counteracting science entirely with theistic ideas, or are you like merging them both together?
Well, first of all, what do you mean by science?
You showed pictures of stars and all of that. That's astrologically proven by science.
Right.
So I'm not understanding the theistic behind it.
But if you had to define what science is, what would you say it is?
Fact.
Well, there are facts that have nothing to do with science, like my name's Frank and your name's Callie, right? That has nothing to do with science.
I would say that's societal fact, like societal science. You're given a name. That's fact.
Yeah, it's a fact. In other words, not all facts are scientific facts. The law of non-contradiction is not a scientific fact. The laws of logic aren't scientific facts. You need the laws of logic in order to do.
I want to say something here, and is pay attention to the body language, both hers and yours, and you see how opposite they are.
Science, right?
Sure.
Okay. So there are facts that aren't scientific facts. That's all I'm saying. So all I'm doing is I'm looking at reality, say the stars, the universe, and I'm trying to discover what caused the universe. And there's scientific evidence that shows us the universe had a beginning. But for me to then say God is the cause, I have to interpret that data and say the best explanation for the creation of space, matter, and time is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, intelligent creator. I'm making an inference. I could be wrong. I'm just saying, based on the data that I have, that appears to be the best explanation. Do you see a better explanation?
I'm not disagreeing or agreeing with you. I'm just saying I wasn't really understanding like your route that you were taking for it.
Oh, all I'm doing is I'm looking at the classic 3 arguments for God that are often given. And I'm saying, based on what we see, it appears that a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent, moral creator actually exists. Now, as I said before, this does not prove the Christian God alone. It might be the Christian God. We've got to see if Jesus rose from the dead to say that the same being that created and sustains the universe and designed the universe and gave us objective moral values is the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,989 years ago, if he indeed do that. If he indeed did do that.
Okay.
All right. So as you can see, when someone is asking a question and they're actually saying something that's just logically fallacious, you want to be gentle in correcting them. You don't want to lose the person. I never want to own people, so to speak. I don't want to try and make anybody look bad. I want to try and bring them along gently if I can, because she doesn't want to be embarrassed. That's not going to help the cause, right? Nobody wants to be embarrassed. You're having a conversation. We're not really having a debate. So you want to be gentle. And also, I think it's important that when you're trying to make an argument for Christianity, don't overstate the argument. Don't say that the cosmological argument proves Christianity, because it doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, it might. It gives support for a God that could be the God of the Bible, but you don't know it's the God of the Bible until you see whether Jesus rose from the dead or not. And then if he did, then you can say, okay, the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,990 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing.
Right.
But you don't know that just from creation. You don't know that from the design argument. You don't know that from the moral law argument. You're getting evidence that could be the Christian God, but it's not confirmed until you discover who Jesus really was.
Yeah, and that an argument like that, do away with things like atheism and pantheism, and but it doesn't get you all the way to Jesus, and that's right. The beauty of it. That we have to be humble enough to say, to know how far those arguments are going to get us into the conversation, and then continue to hold the person by the hand. And that's one of the things that you cannot do in a 5 or 6 minute exchange in a college campus.
Anything else, Phoenix, you see in this one?
Well, of course, I love that you use the classic, what do you mean by science? It forces her to clarify her terms, and her anti-supernatural bias is kind of dripping with her posture and the way she's approaching the topic that science and theology can't touch at all. And so that was interesting. But I thought it was interesting that, you also put it back on her and say, can you think of a better explanation? And, she deflects because she's not prepared to defend any position. So she takes I'm not saying I agree or disagree with you, but I think it's always a valid question to keep in your back pocket. Sure, in that situation, Frank was shouldering the burden of proof because he had made a positive statement based on, he had reasoned from cause back to effect. But she was rejecting it, it would seem, in that moment. So no one's going to force her to defend why she's rejecting it. But in those quiet moments when she's alone, she has to have an alternative. Now, I know people are going to disagree with me. No, she doesn't have to have an alternative explanation, but she kind of does. She's got to have something sitting in the back of her head that says, this is more plausible than what that man said on the stage. She's got to, even if she's not ready to defend it.
Yeah. By the way, for those of you watching here and you want to learn the material and learn how to present it, we, starting January 15th, are doing the Why I Still Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist online course, and it's brand new.
That's
it's
right.
10 hours of new video, new workbook. In fact, Phoenix is working on the workbook right now, making it look real pretty and fun. So if you guys want to be a part of that, go to crossexamine.org, click on online courses. And if you take the premium version, I'll be your instructor, and we'll have 6 live Q&A Zoom sessions together. Also, Shanda Fulbright and I created a kind of I don't have enough faith to be an atheist for 6th to 8th graders. It's called Let's Get Real. And that class starts in January as well. So if you got a 6th to 8th grader, could be 5th to 9th, we're not counting grades too closely here. You can sign up for that as well. So check all that out. Hey, we've got one more
I want to say one more thing about this interaction. It is how sure she was about her knowledge about science. Coming from a materialistic perspective. This is the reason why you have to teach your children clear thinking, good philosophy, critical thinking, because
do we
this
have a
would
course
have never
on that, Jorge?
Train your brain.
For 6 and it is imperative that we do that, because this wouldn't even be in a question if she would have understood to see that all you're doing is you're going from creation to creator, from evidence to
from
cause
to effect.
From effect to cause.
Effect to cause.
Yes.
And that is the main reason why we have people like her that have good intentions, that are willing to learn, that are open to learning, but don't have the structure to learn well.
Yeah, by the way, all of us have gone to Southern Evangelical Seminary, ses.edu. So if you really want to, that's right. It's kind of a magical place to go.
It is.
If you really want to learn this in a formal way and get a degree, go to ses.edu/Frank. You can actually get a scholarship to go there, and start 2024 off right. Start learning how you can defend the faith.
Yeah.
By the way, and you guys know from the Stealing from God book that science, she was talking about science. Science actually doesn't say a thing. Scientists say things, right? Science doesn't say a word. It's scientists that say things. And because all data needs to be gathered and interpreted, and that's what scientists do. So science by itself actually doesn't give you any facts. It's the scientists that are using the scientific method that have to gather and interpret the data to give you the facts if they are correct. So that's a whole nother way of looking at it. But let's do one more, and this might be one of the more combative ones we've had in recent memory. This is from just this past September at Fresno State University. And just to give you a little background here, this person, who I still don't know the gender of, I don't know biologically if this is a man or a woman. But
I believe it's a woman.
This person walked in the middle of the I don't have enough faith to be an atheist presentation, dressed very oddly, and had a big sign, and came right in the middle and walked to the front row and sat with the sign. So I'm thinking in my head, now, is this person going to be a heckler? Is this person going to be a physical threat? What is this person going to do? So I was just trying to concentrate on what I was saying, even though it was a distraction when this person came in. And then once we were done, this person came up to the microphone and protested, and here is how it went.
Hold up, wait, what did the sign say?
Oh, something about it was scratched. It wasn't a real professional sign. It was something about stop bullying LGBTQ people or something like that.
Got it.
You got blood on your hands, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And the person gave their name as Mav, M-A-V. She said, he or she said, just call me Mav. Okay, so here we go.
Why do you say that if I'm going to be a Christian again, then I need to repent from being LGBTQI+, and then accept this narrow version of the gospel? That to me is like conversion therapy, and the UN and all these other major medical organizations in the US and around the world called that torture.
Stop it.
So
Okay. when anybody ever quotes the UN, they've already lost credibility with me. Okay. The UN can't even condemn Hamas. All right.
True.
No.
And the UN is a corrupt organization that has people like North Korea on their ethics panels, you know, or their human rights panels. I mean, it's a complete joke. But anyway, I just had to say that. Sorry, I don't have strong feelings about it. Keep it going.
All right.
Stand here and just defend that? That's pretty messed up.
There is no objective moral standard unless some kind of God exists. Everything is just a matter of human opinion. And so when you hold up a sign that says that certain people have treated LGBTQ people wrongly,
Well, they have, and there's so much evidence for it.
Mav, you might be exactly right about that. But
I know I am. I have experiences and data to back it up.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that people have treated you poorly. But
you don't have to go on and spread these bigoted viewpoints on YouTube and Facebook like you do. It's just a bunch of misinformation. You have no idea.
Mav,
you have blood on your hands.
Okay, Mav. Do you want to have a conversation, or you just want
No, I really just would like you to just apologize and turn around and see that what you're doing is harmful.
Mav, there's only harm if God exists. Harm is only evil if God exists. And so you're stealing.
Harm regardless if God exists or not.
Thank you, Mav. You're not interested. Thank you for coming. I appreciate people coming here who have a different point of view, but it's got to be a dialogue. It can't be a monologue. And I think that, yes, people who identify as LGBTQ have been treated poorly. But I also think now that Christians are being treated poorly. And both of them are wrong. We ought to respect people even if we disagree with them. But that's a moral category. And respect only makes sense as a moral category if there's a moral standard beyond us. Otherwise, everything's just a matter of opinion. If somebody says gay is good, that's a matter of opinion. If somebody says gay is bad, that's a matter of opinion. You have to have a standard. My question to anybody who disagrees is, what is your moral standard? If there is no God, there's no rights to anything. There's no Christian rights, there's no gay rights, there's no transgender rights, there's no human rights. It's just one person's opinion against another. And when we say we're atheists and we start bringing moral categories into the conversation, I'm going to ask, what's the standard you're using? It turns out the standard's stolen from God himself. And that's what I cover in the book, Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. We might agree with a lot of stuff Mav said, that people have been treated immorally, but unless you have a moral standard outside of yourself that we're all obligated to obey, it wasn't really immoral. Do you see the point?
So it's very difficult for any non-theist to make a case that something is objectively right or wrong. There is no grounds other than their own opinion. And that's not in the object, God's nature. That's just in them, the subject. It's no different than saying chocolate tastes better than vanilla. Well, that's just your preference. That's just your opinion. So when someone barges into a presentation and is upset that they've been treated poorly, okay, I get that personally. But if they're not a theist, they have no standard by which to say being treated poorly is wrong. And that's what she was, or he was trying to do. So you always have to point out that you're assuming a standard. By the way, this is, of course, what C.S. Lewis does in Mere Christianity. And for those of you that haven't read Mere Christianity, consider yourself undereducated. Mm-hmm. You need to read Christianity and see how Lewis brilliantly talks about arguing from just morality to some sort of standard, God. And so I always point out that you're trying to make a case from a worldview that doesn't afford you the standard to make a case.
Yeah.
And that's what stealing from God is all about. Now, this woman or man, again, don't know what Mav was or is. You didn't see the whole exchange. You can go to our YouTube channel and watch the whole exchange. Go to Fresno State from just this past September, and you can see a little bit more we talked about. I said, hey, if I gave you a book, would you read it? You know, I always do that. And then I said, if you give me your email address, I'll email you. Well, the email address that Mav left didn't work. So I tried to reach out, didn't work. I reached out to the guy there, and I'll try and get a better email address, but it didn't work. So any other insight on this one?
Unfortunately, as a lot of the commenters already said, that Mav didn't want a conversation. Mav wanted to just voice her feelings on the matter, and that's the kind of what the generation coming up has been trained to do, that they have the right, the entitlement to simply make their demands, and unfortunately that mentality just creates a further divide with us, racially, religiously, politically. The inability to simply talk, see on what points you can find agreement, and seek clarity on each other. That's something, Charlie Kirk can be a divisive figure, but one of the things I really enjoy about him is he'll vocalize, okay, we have clarity, but not agreement. And he goes through that, with a process, and it's very helpful.
Yeah, Charlie's only divisive because he speaks the truth, and a lot of people don't like it.
Right.
That's why I'm divisive too.
True, exactly.
People don't
Jesus
like me either. And
Jesus was very divisive.
Yeah, that's right. I came to bring a sword. It's going to divide mother from daughter, father from son. We think Jesus was all about peace and love. He wasn't. He was not all about peace and love. We're not supposed to be united with the world. We're supposed to be united with other believers in the church. Right. But there's going to people out there watching this right now. You're about to have Christmas Eve dinner and Christmas dinner. And you're going to have people come over your house probably who are in your own family, and you're divided because you're a follower of Jesus and they're not.
Oh, I'm going to tell you, man, Thanksgiving for me is one of the toughest times. And you both know this already. I have to prepare myself, mentally, spiritually, just to go there. Even though we play kickball, so I have to prepare myself physically. That's not the hardest thing to do. You know what I mean? That's not the hardest thing to do. It is, And you see this person, Mav, the sort of confusion. If that is not heartbreaking, then we have a whole generation.
Pain.
Yeah,
so much pain.
Yeah, and Mav is right in feeling this way to a certain extent because Mav feels attacked, and the reason why I'm using Mav, people asking, well, when I have somebody that is like that, should I use their preferred pronouns? No, ask them their name, Mav. I don't know what you are, but you're Mav. Okay, that's not that doesn't violate my conscience. In the truth, right? So what I'm saying is, you see that, but it is a whole generation that think with their feelings. And again, go back to the previous Q&A. She was so sure about her science, but knew nothing about critical thinking and good philosophy, right? We need to make sure that we bring people up in the faith. It's not make them believers in Jesus Christ, is make them disciples, and discipling means teaching them all of these things, in order to have clear thinkers and to have people that can become, as eloquent, as brilliant as Charlie, as you, Frank, as a lot of the guests that we have on our podcast, which is, drops every Tuesday and Friday, right? All of those things have to come together for us to build back a generation that is going to take over what we're going to leave behind, and they're going to do a better job than us.
Right.
Let's go to some chat questions, but before we do, I want to show everybody, in addition to what you've seen here tonight, this is just a sampling of the Q&As from college campuses and some churches as well. We're going to continue to do that in 2024 and beyond. We're not pulling back from that at all. We're amping that up, actually, but we're about to do something even more bold in 2024. We're using a proprietary AI program to translate our best stuff into the top 30 languages in the world, and also translate the best from other apologists that we work with and put it in those 30 languages as well. And it's so amazing. I'm just going to show you about a 15-second clip here. You're going to see me speaking about 4 languages, and I don't speak any of them. But this is what this proprietary AI will do. So, Jorge, can you play that little clip?
Let's do this.
This is on our, if you go to crossexamine.org and click on donate, you can see the entire 4-minute video. We're not going to show you the whole 4 minutes now. We're just going to show you the little section in there where I'm speaking about 4 different languages. And it's not me. doing it. It's an avatar that looks like me. Here it is. Check this out. Middle East, for Europe, Asia, Russia, the Pacific, and China, it's going to be a whirlwind. Let me show you just how amazing this is.
Cross-Examined International is inviting you on a journey sobre cómo el cristianismo es la cosmovisión más razonable, explorando domande quali. Existe la verità, existe Dio, y miracoli sono possibili. So Nuevo Testamento es verdadero. I'm joining the conversation, and how about you?
I don't speak those languages. Yeah, I don't speak those languages. I hardly speak English. You can go to crossexamine.org, click on donate. You can watch that whole video. And if you do want to donate to this, I want to point out that 100% of your donations, first of all, are tax deductible. And secondly, 100% go to ministry. 0% go to buildings. We're all virtual. We all work out of our homes. I'm in my home. Jorge's in his. Phoenix is in hers. So we're very efficient with the finances that you give us. And at the end of the year, if you're led to do that, we greatly appreciate it. What are you going to say, Jorge?
I want to say that that this is a good segue. Everybody on the other side of the screen see the impact that Cross-Examine has and that you have in the lives of all of those who you talk with during your Q&As, your presentations. And I want to highlight some of these comments and let people know that what we're doing, it is, I mean, again, we're not only a defense line for the culture for Jesus, but also an offensive line of attack, because a lot of these issues need to be attacked front and center. And this is the kind of response that we get all the time. I'm going to read this out loud, and I want both of you guys to comment, but I also want the audience on the other side of the screen to comment on whatever you're in, Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, or if you're on our website, we have a chat section there too, to comment about the comments that you're seeing. And if you have experienced something like it, then go ahead and share it with us right now. So here's what I'm going to share first. David says, my battle with my Christian faith over the years have always been my questioning mind. Frank Turek gives me answers that are convincingly logical. This frees me up to pursue my faith unencumbered. I mean, this is, I mean, Frank, what I want you guys to share with the audience how you feel when you read these comments, and how do you, because I tell you something. I sometimes I have anxiety, sometimes I have depression, sometimes I wake up and I feel like I have the best job in the world. Sometimes I wake up and I know I have the best job in the world and I don't want to do it. So how do you stay motivated, Frank?
He's very difficult to work with, ladies and gentlemen. He's an emotional mess.
Don't worry, Jorge. Don't worry, man. I'm going to send you this pillow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because God is going to bring disaster upon you. Jeremiah 44:11.
But pack it with a bag of Soloff, man.
No, it's wonderful to see these kinds of comments, because, you know, for the last 16 years, Frank has been the central figure of Cross-Examine. Central figure, I should say Christ is, but you know, after Christ we've got Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, after Christ we've got Frank. Whoops. And so of course we understand that a lot of the compliments come with, you know, Frank's name attached, and Frank is wonderful in the sense that he's always pointing these kinds of compliments back to the team and the mentors that he's had in his life. And for those of you who don't know, even right now, you're listening to Frank, myself, and Jorge chat, but we've got another 3 people working right now, managing the chats, managing the connection with the live stream. I'm going back and forth with them. Jorge is, and then we've got another 2 or 3 that I saw, staff just in the chat, just hanging out. They're not even being paid to be here. Can you believe it? They're just here. So we're a big team. We work remotely. We do the best that we can to build each other up and stay connected. We're a lot like a family in that way. And receiving these kinds of comments really is morale building, to see that the hours and hours that gets put in to help Frank do what he does is a big
Yeah,
deal.
and they make up for all the comments that say, Turk, you're a jerk.
Yeah, we delete those.
No, we're living.
Yeah, all right. We let comments go in our YouTube feed, as you can see. Yep. And look, I don't know about you, but when I look at YouTube comments, I am again reminded of the depravity of human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're just so crude and so nasty. People say stuff online you would never say, if you're sitting across the table with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, let's take some questions and we can come back to some of these comments if you want.
So I saw one that unless you
go
saw
ahead.
one,
you guys can pull up the question doc and
from
see what you have.
Facebook chat or YouTube chat. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm starting light because this is a pet peeve of mine, and I know it's something you've already talked about. What does the team think of the Jesus he gets it commercials? This person thinks they're woke. I agree. There's anyway, I'll let
actually Frank just said it. Yeah, Jesus gets us. Yeah, you're rotten inside. You're depraved. Of course he gets us. Actually, there is no description of the human condition better than what comes out of Jesus's mouth, in the Gospels. Right. So of course he gets you. He knows you're right. He knows that you're going to be separated from God from eternity in hell unless you repent and you come to him. So
that's the part they leave out of the campaign. That's the part.
If you want to know, just go to our blog, the Cross-Examine blog, and go back about 8 or 9 months, because I wrote an article on this because our friend Natasha Crane pointed out some problems with the He Gets Us campaign. And then I wrote a blog because a lot of people came after her, like, why would you say such a thing about these people? They're trying to get Jesus out there to the general culture. And the question is, well, what kind of Jesus are you trying to get to the general culture?
Jesus?
And Paul, by the way, on 5 or 6 occasions, names false teachers right in the Bible. And so the article or the blog, I'll see if I can find it as we're sitting here. Maybe someone on the team can go back and find it. It has to do with should we name false teachers? And maybe we can put it in the chat, because it makes the case that, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to call out people who are leading others astray. So you can check that out. All right, let's go to another question. What do we got?
All right. Okay. So I'm paraphrasing because I can't find it, but basically rather than paraphrase, I should just read it. Okay, I can't find it right now, but basically, what do you say to a couple who hasn't had a wedding ceremony, hasn't gone to a courthouse, hasn't even been married by a pastor, but they've had their own private ceremony between them and God? Are they married? Is that recognized by God? What would you say to that?
I would say I don't know. Okay. Really, I don't. I don't know if they are. I don't know with the state. How long have they been together? They might be common law. Would the state recognize it?
Well, we're not worried so much about the state. We're worried about, would God say, yeah, you're married? I mean, my thinking is no, unless you're trapped on an island and you don't have access, in which case, I think God would recognize you don't have access to go through the ceremony. But if you have full access to that, which most people do, no, you're not. Like, you've made an intentional decision to not go formalize it.
I guess my question would be, why haven't you gone and done it formally?
Right.
What's the reason? So you'd have to ask some questions to figure it out,
Yeah.
All right.
By the way, our team just put the link to the article on YouTube. So if you guys can put it everywhere else, that'll be fantastic.
No, go ahead.
I got one from Mike Livingston who says, "What's your opinion of Calvinism?"
Oh, I was like, don't ask Frank that. Don't ask Frank that one.
Well, Frank
has been actually.
Frank, not predestined to talk about it, right?
Frank, you've been like the poster boy for the back and forward over there at Leighton's channel.
Leighton Flowers has a great YouTube channel called Soteriology 101. And I pretty much agree with much of what he says. And if you go back to April of this year in our podcast, you can hear me interviewing him on Calvinism. So that's probably the fastest way to get a bigger answer than what we can do here in just a minute. Okay. Let me just say one thing about Calvinism. I think people think that because God knows everything, he's causing everything to happen, which isn't true. Just because God knows what you're going to do doesn't mean he's causing you to do it. I mean, I know the sun's going to come up in the east tomorrow, but I'm not causing it to come up in the east. Knowledge does not imply causation. And so people get all wrapped around the axle when they think, well, you know, God knows what I'm going to do, so how can I have free will? Just because he knows what you're going to do doesn't mean you don't have free will. If you freely decided to do the opposite of what you're doing right now, he would have known that too. So knowledge does not imply causation. We are chosen, but we're also free.
That's right. All right. This question, if God is love, why would he allow condemnation to fall on everyone because of what two people did, Adam and Eve?
Oh, now that you mention Adam and Eve, somebody says, you know, who on earth married Adam and Eve? And actually, the interesting thing is that God did that. God created them to be there. I remember that the garden, we don't know how long they were together in the Garden of Eden. That's not told in the scriptures that we have. But God was the officiant at that wedding. You know, imagine, I mean, I had Frank as the officiant of my wedding. Adam and Eve had God. You know what I mean? So
you had the next best thing.
I know. You just said it. You know, you have Frank and then Jesus, right?
Yeah, right. And then, of course, the big question is, where did Cain get his wife? And I think we all know. ChristianTingle.com.
Hey,
I hate that joke.
Hey, again, so now back to the question. I'm sorry, guys. I had to say that. I saw that come up and definitely had to bring it up.
Well, okay, so before I repeat it, so Frank, the question was basically, why do all of us bear the curse of the fall because of the actions of two people?
First of all, it's a moral standard to say that it would be immoral of God to do that. Where are you getting this moral standard from? To say that it's wrong for God to put this condition on everyone? That's number one. You have to assume there's a standard outside of God by which to judge him. But secondly, if we are all in this standard because of what Adam and Eve did, and yet God provides a way out for free, is that unfair?
Right.
No, it's not unfair, because God provides a way out of the problem for free. The third thing you got to remember is, even if you don't have the sin of Adam and Eve, and you know, some Christians disagree over this original sin concept, even if we don't bear the sin of Adam and Eve, we're still going to sin ourselves anyway. So it's kind of a moot point, right? I mean, okay, so whether or not you have the sin of Adam and Eve, you still have your own sin you need to pay for. And fourthly, the other thing you need to consider is that if we can be condemned by one man, Adam, we could also be saved by one man, Jesus. Because Adam is our federal head, so to speak. This is a theological term. And Jesus, therefore, is our federal savior, meaning if one man can cause us to fall, one man can save the entire human race. You don't need 8 billion Christ to save 8 billion individual people. You just need one Christ, because we all have the same problem, sin.
Absolutely.
That's right. I remember wrestling with this myself as an indignant teenager, thinking that this wasn't a very just move. But I don't know who said it, but to paraphrase, it was like, you eat the fruit. You eat the fruit every day. If we're talking about a miracle, fruit.
We're all sinners.
Essentially, we're all sinners. If you were in the garden right now, you think you're more moral than Adam and Eve. You've got the same nature. You're going to screw it up. Every lie you tell, every time you lose your temper, think of that as your figurative fruit.
That's right.
Got another question here. Michael Green asks, Frank, should Christians vote for a presidential candidate that is not a Christian? For example, Vivek
would never vote.
Ramas, you know how to say it.
Yeah.
Vivek. Yeah.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah. Because sometimes you don't have even Christians in the race. So
most of the time.
You got to pick. So you can look at it a certain way. You got to pick either the best candidate or the least worst candidate. And actually, it's not really about candidates. In our system, it's more about parties and platforms. And you have to vote platform over personality. because no matter who wins the presidency, when they get to Washington, they're going to bring with them about 5,000 people in an administration, and their party is going to put forth a platform, and 94% of the time they're going to vote with that platform. So I urge anybody who's a Christian to look at the two-party platforms, because one of those two parties is going to put forth the candidate who becomes president. We're not at a point now where a third party is going to actually win. It might happen in the future. And when you look at the two-party platforms, neither of them are perfect. But I think when you fairly look at the two-party platforms, the Republican platform is much closer biblically than the Democrat platform. Particularly now you have the Democrat platform, which puts forth abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. You have them wanting to mutilate children. You have them completely against the marriage, natural law marriage. You have them putting forth even now legalization of drugs and many other things that are just so completely anti-biblical. I can't see how Christians vote that way anymore. I'm sorry, I just can't see how they do. Doesn't mean the Republican candidates are great, but the platform is much better.
Yeah.
And as I say, 94% of the time, if you look at the stats, the people in Congress and the people who are heading the party, the president or the senior leader, they vote with the platform. So read the platforms and vote accordingly, vote biblically.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. This one, this one's an easy one for me because I'm wading my way through Geisler's systematic theology right now. So the question is, why did God repent in the Old Testament? Do you want to?
Are you talking about he repented of creating? Is that like Noah?
Yeah.
Is that what they're talking about?
No, and examples of when he had, exactly. He had regret for making man,
Okay,
or
well,
things like that.
Look, I mean, you can know when you have a child, and we're all parents here. And there's many people out there who are parents as well, and we're all former children, right? Okay, so this should apply to everyone. When you have a child of your own, from the moment you conceive that child, you know that at some point that child's going to rebel against you. And when that child does, you're going to regret that child rebelled against you. But that doesn't mean that you didn't want them to come into the world. It doesn't mean that you're caught by surprise, like, I didn't know they were going to do that, right? God knew they were going to do that, but he could still have this, from our perspective, this sense of regret that the generation of Noah became so evil. It doesn't mean it didn't mean that God didn't have the information, that he didn't know that they would rebel. He knew that, but it still can bring regret, just like it's going to bring regret for you when your kid. I remember when our oldest son, when my wife caught him in his first lie. And she actually just bawled in front of him. And he was shocked that mommy was just distraught that he had lied, or that she was distraught that he had lied to her. And that was a big lesson for him. But it wasn't like Stephanie said, I wish I'd never, gave birth to Zach. She regretted that he had lied, and it hurt her. But she knew it would happen at some point, right?
And the other thing, anybody who's reading the Bible needs to understand that they use, this is a fancy word, but anthropomorphic language to describe God. We don't have perfect language. We have finite language to describe an infinite being. So we have to apply words that describe emotions, human emotions, to try and capture some of the sentiments that God has. But so it's easy for us to think regret. Well, we only feel regret when there's something beyond our control, something we didn't anticipate coming, something like that. Obviously, God is outside of time. He already knows the things that are coming. He's already feeling regret, if you want to use that word, for things that have not yet happened. It's beyond our understanding. But so it can trip us up because we're trying to understand an infinite being using finite language from a human perspective. Yeah.
And it would be strange if an infinite God wasn't strange to us.
That's correct.
There's some things we're not going to understand.
Yep.
Let's do a few more, Jorge, before we have to go. What else we got?
Well, I don't have any questions in front of me. I've been trying to.
Oh, okay. I got it.
Maybe Phoenix has some, or you have some on that doc.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch. Okay, so let's see. Well, I mean, this is an easy one. How does one get started in apologetics? You'd first donate to Cross-Examine. That's how you start.
Yeah.
We've already recommended SES, Southern Evangelical Seminary. Of course, you don't have to get formal training to get into apologetics. Apologetics should be a common word in every single church. Unfortunately, it isn't.
Right.
But it's simply you're taught to evangelize, and you're not even taught to do that everywhere. Hopefully, you're at least taught the essentials of the faith. Apologetics is the pre-evangelism step. So it's one thing to try and make a compelling case for why we're depraved and why we want God to transform us. Apologetics is all those books and podcasts, and there's just so much information out there.
I was gonna say this. Bring people to our website. You can go to crossexamine.org. It's right there at the bottom bar. You have tons of blogs, videos, podcasts. You can even join a community of fellow believers. They are willing to help you. You can just go to CE Community, click right here. And actually, you can also go to online courses. Once you click online courses, it's going to send you, and you're going to be able to see all the premium courses. You're going to be able to see all the instructors that we have. You're also going to be able to see all the self-paced courses. There are a ton of courses here that you can take. But the new course that Frank was talking about, this Why I Still Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, updated and expanded, is a course that is gonna blow your mind away. It starts in 17 days, and you're gonna be able to go through what is called, and this is one of the main issues that we have in Latin America, is that there are a lot of people that want to do apologetics, but they don't know the methodology of to do apologetics, and there's several out there. And what we teach here at Cross-Examine is what is classical apologetics. That's the methodology that we use. It's the two-step approach. First, we show that God exists, and then we show that the Bible is reliable, right? And there are several steps they get there, but it is the best way to do it. Why? Because it's the way that rolls naturally in people's minds. We know that all knowledge starts in the senses, right? And that is the way. First, we start with truth, then with the existence of God, then we move on to other things like the existence of miracles, right? Because if we're going to look at the Bible is full of miracles, and the Bible cannot be the word of God if, miracles are not possible. And then from there, we look at all sorts of things like the reliability of the scriptures, of the eyewitness testimony. We look at, archaeological evidence to back up what is in scripture, and we see what Jesus says about himself, and, that he, not only predicted his death and his resurrection, but he also accomplished it, and he claims to be the Son of God, and he claims that the Old Testament is the Word of God. Therefore, you have Old Testament and New Testament as the Word of God. So it is a step-by-step process that will help you get to the truth of the gospel and persuade others about the truth, because at the end of the day, souls are in play. This is
don't
not
forget.
Just, yeah.
I was going to say, don't forget this Christmas, the next couple of nights when you're having family dinner, if you're in a conversation, ask the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian?
Yeah.
Or ask, if you want to keep Christianity out of it because they have this negative connotation in their head about Christianity, you can say, look, if Jesus really did rise from the dead to prove he was God, would you follow him? And if the answer is no, or hesitation, it's not a head problem, it's a heart problem. They don't want it to be true.
That's right.
They're not on a truth quest or on a happiness quest. Well, at least you can see where people stand and then know how to follow up after that. And it might teach them something about themselves. Yeah, why wouldn't I believe it if it were true? Because they don't want it to be true. They don't want there to be a God. They want to be God of their own lives. Or they want to create a God in their own image. It's more meology than theology, right? I just want to create a God that agrees with me all the time. It was Tim Keller who famously said that I don't care where you are politically, or where you are religiously, or where you are culturally, the Bible will disagree with your personal opinion somewhere.
Yeah.
It disagrees with everybody somewhere.
Yeah.
The question is, are you the standard? Or is there a standard beyond you? By the way, we do have a question about is Christmas pagan. You guys need to listen. You guys got to listen tomorrow when the next podcast drops with the great Bill Federer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I asked Bill one question a segment, and he goes on for like 13 minutes. I don't have to ask him. He tells you the history of Santa, of Saint Nicholas, of reindeer and the North Pole, and Christmas trees. Where does all this stuff come from? You're not going to want to miss the podcast tomorrow. In fact, we did one like this like 5 or 6 years ago, and it was one of the favorite podcasts of all time. We redid it with Bill.
Maybe we can bring him live on one of this and have him, share his PowerPoint and everything, because he does such a fantastic. And I'm gonna tell you something. It was really funny. So I'm eating breakfast this morning, and he's blowing up my phone, and I'm like, "What's going on, Bill?" He thought that we was gonna record this morning.
Oh yeah, that's what we rescheduled. Well, we're going to have him on next week too, because he's going to talk about the history of modern Israel, the modern state of Israel, which came into existence in 1948. Because a lot of people don't know the history. How did that happen? Yeah. Right. And what about the Palestinians? And who has the right to the land and all that? We're going to talk all about it with Bill Federer next week. But tomorrow we're going to have
tomorrow
him
is going to be It's going to be the
Yeah.
golden show about Christmas. It's going to be terrific. So, and again, a lot of people are commenting. We know this. Paul tells us for these things we have freedom in Christ. So if you don't want to celebrate Christmas, you don't want to put the tree up or the lights. I don't even put the lights. I put the tree up for like 3 days and then take it down. That's fine. Let me be. I'll let you be. But this is not a salvific issue. Don't bend over backwards and start throwing holy water to everybody who has a Christmas tree or give gifts. Let's remember that the idea was to give names, and I grew up in Costa Rica, and the idea was that it was the Christ child that will bring you gifts. It was, and we actually had a phrase, El Niñito Dios. It was the Christ child that will bring you gifts. So some of that historical trace is still there. But let's go ahead on and be what we ought to be as Christians. This is the thing where we have freedom on. So
how could Santa bring you presents in a sleigh in Costa Rica? Well, nobody was going to buy that.
Yeah, well,
right?
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's do one more. Yeah, because we've got to go, and we don't want to keep people here all night, even though this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Pick one.
Well, this is. I mean,
what?
Well, this isn't. Sorry, I feel like a lot of these are just real easy, short ones. So I'm just tossing them at you, but they may not be the ones you pick. Real simple. How does a person go from belief that to belief in?
Yeah, belief that is knowing that Jesus is the Savior, and belief in is trusting in Him. And for that,
trusting in Him.
It's just it's just deciding that you're going to repent and trust in Jesus, as Paul says in Romans 10, that if you believe in your heart, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is risen from the dead, you will be saved. Right. So that's how you do it. You open your heart up to the Holy Spirit and you accept Him. Now, the only reason you can do that is because a little over 2,000 years ago, the God of the universe added humanity to His deity, came into this universe, this time-space continuum, to live the perfect life in our place. And of course, we celebrate Christmas, Him coming into the world, and Easter, Him taking the sins upon Himself, our sins upon Himself, and then rising from the dead to prove He was God and to foreshadow what's going to happen to us someday, that we're also going to rise from the dead if we trust in Him. And so it's a good way to point out that to go from belief that to belief in is only possible if Christmas actually happened and Easter actually happened.
That's right. Hey, Frank, before we move on, I do want to read more comments. I want to read this one from Marcus. It's Frank Turek, you're the reason now I'm a Christian. He's an ex-Muslim. God bless you. And we see here that
thanks, Marcus.
And here we see apologetics in action. A lot of people say, hey, you cannot bring people, to Christ through apologetics. We actually bring in people through to Christ through apologetics. We have
I came to
another
faith
one.
through apologetics.
Yeah. So
there's
this
plenty
one
of
says,
people that do.
hey, Dr.
Yeah.
Frank, my name is Gilbert and I'm from Malaysia. I'm a Christian. By the way, I stumbled across your video on YouTube about 1 day ago, and I got to say you're fantastic. Seriously watching your answer questions, debating non-believers, really lifting my faith into another level. You give me strength spiritually. And this is another thing that I wanted to highlight is that for us here at Cross Examine, our job and our mission is not only to be at the forefront in the university, just so we can show people that they're wrong. Ultimately, is to bring people to Christ, but also those who are in Christ need to be strengthened because the world is dark, and that is our everyday task to bring people light, hope, and teach them, give them the ability to answer all the questions that they have. I do want to move on to the next one. Bobby says, I wanted to thank you because your videos have really helped me through doubt, and God is using you in amazing ways. So we have a lot of questions like that. I'm not going to continue. That's the last one I'm going to put over there. But I wanted to let everybody know on the other side, if you have stories like this, you can always email them to us at info@crossexamine.org. Leave them on the comments. These are what feeds us spiritually, so we can continue doing this day to day. Like I said, some days are high, some days are low, but the thing is that Jesus never changed. I might change. I might feel anxious and down and depressed one day, and then I have to do a bunch of stuff, but Jesus doesn't change. And our comments like this that make me revitalize me and make me feel like I got to keep going for all of those who, number one, don't know Jesus yet, and those who do know Jesus but don't know what to do and how to respond to the cultural obstacles that they have nowadays.
Yeah, we're sorry, folks. We can't get to all the questions here, but Diego, who's working in the back room on this, Diego, if you can save those questions, I may try and get to some of those in the midweek podcast next week. So save some of those questions if you would, or just save that list of questions. I'll try and get to it in the midweek podcast. For those of you who don't know, we have two podcasts on the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist podcast. One is broadcast on radio, the American Family Radio Network. That drops on Friday afternoon. There's a midweek one that is not broadcast on radio. It drops Tuesday afternoon. So again, folks, thank you for being with us and supporting us. If you're considering year-end donations, 100% of your donations are tax deductible, and 100% go to ministry, 0% to buildings. And you're going to help us reach the world with this new proprietary AI. Just go to crossexamine.org, click on donate, and you will see this 4-minute video that explains this new international project. We're calling it Kingdom AI, that we're going to use to try and reach the world. So check all that out. In addition to us going to college campuses, churches, high schools, we're going to do that as well, and do the podcast, the TV show. What else? What else you got, Phoenix? Before we go?
I was going to say, well, before we go, you said we should respond to one of the mean or provocative comments.
Oh, one of the mean ones. So we got a mean one? Okay,
so because this guy comments all the time as I was going through, and he's an atheist. He says, and since this is your forte, you go, and let's end on this. Good to see that Frank still doesn't have a clue what atheism is, or the fact that it requires absolutely no faith at all. Respond.
Yeah, well, he doesn't explain what he means by atheism or faith. So how do you respond?
Well,
right?
Okay, that's true.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
True.
So, if he means, if faith, according to someone like Richard Dawkins, means you have no evidence for your position, you're believing it blindly, then atheists have to have a serious amount of faith. That's why we call the book "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist," because they have to explain how the universe is the way it is. Why does it exist at all? They have to explain all these effects that a theist can explain. The universe existing to begin with, the fact that it's fine-tuned, life existing to begin with, the fact that there are new life forms which appear to require intelligence and new information as well. Objective moral laws, they have to explain where those come from. Consciousness, the laws of logic, the laws of mathematics, not to mention the idea that there's evidence that this man Jesus actually predicted and accomplished his own resurrection from the dead. And there's Old Testament prophecy. And I mean, there's so many things that have to be explained. And atheists have no explanation for any of that. They don't even have an explanation for how reason could exist. They think we're all molecular machines, moist robots. So if anyone has to have faith, that's kind of blind allegiance to a viewpoint. It's not the Christian. It's the materialistic atheists who has to have all this blind allegiance. So it's not the Christians that have the problem. It's the atheists that have the problem.
Let's bring atheists like Anthony Flew, who I know he became some sort of deist at the end, but let's bring those who are actually consistent with their worldview. You know, you cannot, have your cake and eat it too. So with that note,
well, the only consistent atheist was probably Nietzsche, and he went mad.
Right.
Because Nietzsche realized the implications of atheism there's no purpose, there's no right and wrong, there's no objective anything. Everything is just bleak. Everything is just meaningless. And so he tried to live that out, and it drove him nuts.
Right.
So,
and with that being said, everybody,
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Yes, Merry Christmas.
How did we segue into that? Come on.
Yes, thank you all for supporting us all 2023. 2024 is going to be amazing. I mean, if you still haven't given your end a year gift, you can send it our way. Like I said, 100% goes to ministry, 0% goes to building. We have the little pug right there making an appearance.
Is that Archie?
This is Archie.
Look at
there
Archie.
you go.
Come on.
Little bat wings.
There you go.
You got to donate to feed the hungry animals.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you all, Cross-Examine community. Thank you, people on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. This has been amazing. We want to do this more, and leave your ideas on the comment. What kind of podcast you want to see, what kind of guests you want to see, what kind of live streams you want to see, because this year, as you can see, we got next level technology to do podcast, to do live streams now, so we want to make sure that we use it for the glory of God.
What kind of sound effects you want Jorge?
That's right. That's right. If you be like, okay, what did you say?
Yes.
All right. When Frank answers something I don't like.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's it.
Merry
Any last
Christmas,
words?
folks. God bless you guys. We'll see you here next time.
See ya.
Bye-bye.